Well, here we are again, back in the shop. A while back, I made this router plane, and I took some video footage of how I did it. You can watch that if you want. Well, I'm going to make another one, but it's going to be smaller this time. I need something that'll let me get into grooves and dados that are 1/4 inch, 5/16, somewhere around there. And this one's it's just too big. I can't, when I'm doing delicate and small work, it's just too large. So I'm going to use this as the pattern, and I got this from something I downloaded off the internet quite a while back. And as you can see, all I did was I took the pattern and did some spray adhesive and just attached it to that piece of cherry. Made sure that the bottom of that piece is flat. The other things I'm going to need are this thumb screw and wing nut. And I'm going to use this 6mm Allen wrench as the blade. So what I'm going to do first is I'll probably drill out the holes for the center. So I'm probably going to drill out this hole here and these two holes here and here while I've got it in this with this much material around it, so it'd make it a lot easier for me to do the drilling. So let's go over to the drill press and see what kind of trouble we can get into. Alright, start off with, I'm going to drill this hole here and this hole here using a 5/8 inch Forstner bit. For the large center hole, I'm going to be using a 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit. Okay, here we are at the bandsaw. I'm going to cut out the shape now. So that's the basic shape of it. Now it's just doing some sanding to sand down to the lines here. So I've got a little bit of cleanup work to do with the rasp. So some of these more difficult areas that I couldn't get to with the sanding drum. So well, back here at the drill press, I've got a 9/32 brad point bit set up here, and I probably should have done this when I still had all of that material surrounding the body of the plane, but I forgot, and here I am, so let's get at it. Now, I don't know how well you can see that, but this area right here, and you can see that I've got it laid out, and I've darkened the lines here so you can see it. I apologize if this is kind of blurry, but at any rate, this material has to be removed in order to let the thumb screw recess into this, so that as I tighten the wing nut, it will draw up against this space in here and tighten against, or hold the cutter in place. So what I've got to do is I've got to remove some material here, and I may not film it, probably won't, because I just really don't have the best way to get in there and show you, but I'll do what I can, and then I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, now I've got the thumb screw in here, and I've got it so that it's locked in place. I used a couple of 1/4 20 nuts and jammed them together. So I'm going to center drill this first, and then I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit and go all the way through. Okay, here's how the handle or the body of the plane turned out, the router plane turned out. One thing that I had to do was I had to create a recess right here so that I could get the head of the thumb screw down inside there. My thumb screw is just a little bit long, but perhaps when you make yours, if you decide to, make that hole a little bit bigger, and you may or may not have to chisel all that away. I used some chiseling and rasp and so on and so forth to remove that material. So you see that there. Okay, so let's see how this is going to work. So I'm going to take the thumb screw and I'm going to put it in there. Okay. Then I'm going to take a washer and then the wing nut. Come on now, don't do me wrong. Had you on there a little bit ago. What are you trying to do to me now? There we go. All right. So then, now I haven't shaped the key yet. This is going to be the cutter, but I just want to see how this is going to work out, right? So put the cutter in and tighten down the the wing nut rather. And so once I get the cutter shaped, this should work out quite nicely. I mean, we'll see how it works out. See what kind of fine tuning I got to do. But you can see how that's holding the cutter in there, right? So, I mean, you don't have to reef on this thing really hard. You don't have to put the grip of 9 ninjas on that thing or anything, but you know, it seems to be working all right. So the next thing to do is to cut this to length, and then put the bevel on it so that it's going to cut. So that'll be next. All right, the first thing we got to do is cut off the excess. And what I've done is, because the Allen wrench that I'm using is somewhat hard, it's tough, but it's not tool steel hard. What I've done is I first of all went and selected where I wanted to cut the material, and then with a triangular shaped file, I created a groove that would allow my hacksaw blade to start in that spot. Okay, now this is not exactly soft, So I'll probably end up ruining this hacksaw blade, which is no big deal. They're a dime a dozen. But at any rate, this is going to take a little bit of time. So let's see how this goes. Now I bet I could probably just break that off. Hold that device a little bit tighter. That's pretty hot, but see, there it is. You get that before it catches a fire. That's pretty hot. All right, so while it's at it, it is hot. There's no doubt about it. It's not as hot as it would have been had I used a cutoff. Excuse me, a cutoff tool. So now we got to grind a 30-degree bevel on this side and taper it from, got to taper it from here back to here by about 1/8 of an inch or so. So, all right, got our cutter, or cutter blank, I should say. Some water to keep the cutter cool as we're grinding it. So let's get at it. First, I'm just going to smooth it up a little bit. Try to remove some of those marks from the hacksaw. All right. So now I'm going to start grinding this at approximately 30 degrees. Now what I'm doing is I'm checking this facet right here to see if it's even. If it's even, then I know that I'm straight across there. See, I'm a little heavier on this side than I am on this side. That's a little better. It's hard to get that just right. Now I want to check this angle and get a drink of water. Okay, what I'm starting to do now is I'm starting to put the grind right here. This is going to be a relief for the, so that when this is done, what will be exposed is just the very tip of that cutter. So this will be a back bevel to expose that edge. Now comes the fun part, the handwork. Well, the last thing to do with the router plane is to see how it's going to work. I did make some modifications to the blade. I made the cutting angle less steep and ground some off of the sides You may not be able to see it from this angle, but I ground some off of this side and off of this side to make it more square so I could get into the corners of the dado or groove much better. So I've adjusted it a little bit, so we're going to just see how this works out. Seems to work better on a closed grain piece of wood. Earlier I tried this on some pine, and while it worked, it seems to cut the harder woods better. So it doesn't cut too bad. I know that you're not supposed to go through all the way through the groove or the dado because there's a risk of tear out. Let's advance it just a little bit more and see. Just light taps with my little hammer here. Well, that's taking a pretty good bite. A little bit more of a bite than what I would prefer, but it's not doing too bad. So the way the cutter was shaped before really didn't allow me to get right up to the corners of the groove and remove that material that can get stuck down there in the corner. So that's one of the reasons why I modified the blade. I guess the true test, or the true way to find out how well this is working, is to put some calipers on it. I guess I'm going to check the depth. Now, you know, when I first laid this out, I laid it out so that the groove or the dado would be 3/8 of an inch deep. And since this is just a test piece, it fits fairly tight. I mean, the dado itself is pretty tight. And I would be certainly satisfied with that fit if I were putting, for example, if this were a drawer back or something, I would be satisfied with that. So let's see what we've got as far as our depth is concerned. Take out of the vise to see how even that is. And zero those. It looks like 413, so that would be 7/16. Or no, 430. I think 437 is. So that's 413 there as far as the depth is concerned. And over on this side, it looks like it's 417. So, you know, 4 thousandths of an inch difference from side to side. I think that's acceptable. So all in all, I think that the little router plane worked out quite well. So I'm glad to have it. Well, I hope that you've been inspired to make one of these on your own. And you know, this one didn't cost me a dime. I had all the stuff necessary to make it. You notice that I used a different kind of locking or different kind of nut on this on the back, because of the fact that the wing nut that I had on there was causing a problem. So I used this other knurled nut. So at any rate, I appreciate your watching. We'll see you on the next project. Take care.